grateful to you, sir, for your kind words. So, as the title mentioned, today I would try to make understanding about what is FTIR and UV visual, electromagnetic radiation range, basic principle, and how to record a data or how to use it in research. Means what are the possible application of FTIR and UV visual spectroscopy in advanced research. I am pleased to mention that I have been at Purvanchal University in 2019 and delivered a talk on soft material during a conference. I also visited the instrumentation facility available in the institute, and I liked it a lot. I appreciate the effort made by Professor Rajaram Yadav to develop this infrastructure in the Purvanchal at the Purvanchal University. Now, this question is for students. Now, question arises: why is seminars preferred over webinars? Because the seminar provides.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. Fine. Thank you. So, because these seminars provide real flavor of interaction, which is missing in webinars. So before starting today's agenda, let me talk about my research activities at IIT Indore. Means what kind of material I am exploring at IIT Indore. I have a small research group dedicated for the development of soft materials as well as the study the corrosion behavior of materials. As the pictures I demonstrated here, I have few PhD students. These two has been completed and third one is about to submit. And these are the MTech students and these are BTech students currently working with me. This Jay Sukla has joined PhD in USA. So as I mentioned you, I work on development of soft materials, particularly the gels. If you talk more precisely, I work on inorganic gel, that is also called metallogels. I developed this metallogel with an objective to find out multi-stimuli responsive gel, electrically conductive gel, mechanically strong gel, magnetic gels, and most importantly, nanofabrication and nanocatalysis within the gel matrix, which is quite a really important process for the scientific community to perform a reaction within the gel phase material. And I also developed the fluorescent gels. Okay. On the other hand, I utilize this soft material in the corrosion study. For instance, we developed the hydrophobic coating for the corrosion protection. On the other hand, we utilize these fluorescent materials for corrosion monitoring. So this is the overview about my research activity at IIT Indore. So at IIT Indore, I developed two laboratories. I joined in 2017. After that, I developed these two laboratories. One is dedicated for soft material, another is for corrosion study. So we have various instrumental facilities within the laboratory itself, including fluorescence spectrophotometer, spin coater, programmable oven, salt spray chamber, corrosion analyzer, and FTIR also, as I'm going to talk about FTIR. So let's start today's agenda. And probably the most important question arises, what is infrared spectroscopy? So as mentioned here, there are two terms. One is infrared, another is spectroscopy. So you are much familiar with the term spectroscopy. As you know, the spectroscopy is the branch of science concerned with the investigation and measurement of spectra produced when matter interacts with the electromagnetic radiation, or you can say emits electromagnetic radiation after interaction with the matter. Right? And you also know that infrared is a kind of electromagnetic radiation. Thus, we can say that IR spectroscopy studies the interaction between matter and infrared radiation. right? So as demonstrated here, infrared radiation is the electromagnetic radiation. If you talk about in terms of wavelength, infrared radiation is longer in wavelength than the visible region, but shorter than the microwave region. If you talk about in terms of energy, infrared radiation has lower in energy than this visible region, but higher than the microwave region. If you talk about in terms of low frequency, then infrared radiation has lower in frequency than the visible region, but higher than the microwave region. So these are the facts about the FTIR in terms of this electromagnetic radiation. So this entire electromagnetic range can be represented in the form of wavelength, or you can represent in the form of energy or frequency or wave number. If you talk about the FTIR, we usually study the FTIR in terms of wave number, and I would discuss the conversion from the wave length to wave number later. And please remember, IR usually represented in the wave number, and unit will be centimeter inverse 1 as demonstrated here. So now question is, what is range for IR? Usually it is 400 to 4000 centimeter inverse 1 as demonstrated here. In fact, it is the real IR range, or you can say it is mid IR range. Usually materials absorb infrared radiation in the mid IR range. So apart from this, we have another range also. Okay, so entire infrared region can be divided into 3 parts. First near infrared, then mid infrared, then far infrared. So what is range for near IR? Near IR 12,820 to 4,000 centimeter inverse 1. And for mid IR 4,000 to 400 centimeter inverse 1. And for far IR 400 to 33 centimeter inverse 1. So we usually record the FTIR spectrum in the mid IR range. Okay, but the entire range is from 12,820 to 33 centimeter inverse 1. So we have discussed about the electromagnetic radiation rays, but now question rises, what is the effect of a particular radiation on a material or a molecule? So let's assume this diatomic molecule connected through a covalent bond. And what will be effect of radiation on this diatomic molecule? So suppose this covalently bonded molecule and radiation is falling, then what will be future of this molecule? What will be effect of the radiation on this molecule? This we are going to study in this FTIR spectroscopy. So this is the entire range given for this electromagnetic radiation. If you talk about gamma rays and X-rays, this gamma rays and X-rays can break this covalent bond and ionize these atoms. Okay, while this UV visible can excite the electron from this ground state to the upper excited state. If you talk about FTIR has capability only to vibrate the molecule, while microwave has capability to rotate the entire molecule. So, but today we talk about the only vibration and electronic excitation in FTIR and UV visible spectroscopy. Okay, we have learned that IR can vibrate a molecule. Well, look at this animation. The molecule of carbon dioxide can absorb energy from infrared radiation, and this animation shows the molecule of carbon dioxide absorbing and incoming infrared photon as demonstrated in this yellow arrow. This is incoming and this one outgoing IR radiation. The energy from photon causes this carbon dioxide molecule to vibrate as it is clear in this animation. Sometimes later, the molecule gives up this extra energy by emitting another infrared photon. So once this extra energy has been removed from emitted photon, the carbon dioxide molecule stops vibrating, as demonstrated here. So radiation in the, I'd like to tell you some fact about FTIR. The radiation in the IR region of electromagnetic spectrum has the energy, means sufficient energy to excite the vibration of the covalent bond. Okay. The absorption of IR causes the covalent bond to either stretch or bend. The stretches can be correspond to the increasing or decreasing the bond length within a molecule. Bonds correspond to the increasing and decreasing angle between bonds in a molecule, as demonstrated in this deformation vibration. Okay. Bond angle is changing here, but other cases the bond length is changing. So now let's consider IR light passes the sample material, as demonstrated here. And for instance, suppose you have selected this water molecule as sample. So depending upon energy of infrared, it can trigger the vibration of a specific molecular bond. That is called absorption. Okay, the IR radiation will be absorbed by this water molecule. Now what will happen? This animation shows the possible vibration of water molecules. As demonstrated here, there are 3 vibrations. Okay, two is symmetric, another is anti-symmetric vibration. Out of these 2 stretches, okay, another the third one related to bending. All the 3 vibrations require different kind of amount of energy. So the water molecule absorbs IR radiation at 3 different wavelength, or you can say the wave numbers. The wavelength of IR radiation that correspond to 2 stretches are quite similar because it is kind of stretching. Okay, so another one will be different. So the bend takes less energy and it corresponds to the longer wavelength of IR radiation. So now again question arises, क्या ये सारे radiation को molecule absorb करेगा? Is it possible to absorb all this radiation by molecule? So when IR radiation shown on a molecule, it can absorb it if there is condition. The energy of radiation corresponds to the energy required to vibrate the molecule, and the vibration leads to the change in the dipole moment of the molecule. So new term we have introduced, dipole moment. Okay, the radiation should cause the change in the dipole moment of the molecule. Okay, so absorbed energy is consumed and absent from this original IR beam, or you can say the transmitted beam. Okay, this IR is falling to the molecule, whatever intensity it will be. Okay, and outgoing means transmitted will be less. Okay, means some amount of energy absorbed by this molecule. Okay, so you can say the missing energy. But how now next question is how to measure this missing energy. To measure the this missing energy, we have some setup. Okay, that is called IR instrument setup. So to measure this missing energy, first we need a IR source of light. Okay, and the light will be directed to the sample, and some amount of light will be reflected, and some amount of light will be absorbed by the material, and rest of the amount will travel through the sample, and it will be transmitted and collected by the detector to produce the electronic signal as demonstrated through this graph. And what will be x-axis? X-axis will be wave number, okay, in centimeter inverse 1, and y-axis will be transmitted for the FTIR spectroscopy. And we have already discussed that in the IR spectroscopy, we measure the intensity of transmitted light in the form of wave number, and unit will be centimeter inverse. So now next question arises, means how to prepare a sample. As this is the workshop, so we need to understand about basically the instrumental technique. Because of pandemic, we are unable to get training physically, but it is okay. So first step to prepare the sample. How to prepare the sample? You need the KBR, okay, dry KBR. You need the mortar pestle. Just take the KBR and your sample in 1:2 ratio, in 1:10 ratio. Mix it, grind it, okay, and put it here. This special kind of setup. Put it here inside and keep this rod inside and apply this hydraulic press. Okay, after that you will get the KBR plate like this. And this plate, with the help of this special kind of setup, you insert here, and this side, this is the source. Okay, this side is the detector. So what will happen? The source IR light will fall to the sample, and sample will absorb few amount of light, and the rest of the light will be transmitted to the detector, and detector will analyze this transmitted light, and it will give the information in the form of spectra. Right, so this was the old technique, but now these techniques has been replaced, removed by most advanced FTIR ATR system. So in this system, this Spectrum 2 model we have in our laboratory at IIT Indore. Okay, just put your sample here, press it here with the help of this knob. Okay, and immediately you will get the spectra. No need to make this KBR, nozzle, mole, any kind of process. So it's now very simple and advanced technique. So now next question, Raja, how do we get FTIR spectrum? Okay, so as demonstrated here, we have this IR light source. So in first step, what will happen? It will fall to the beam splitter. Okay, the beam will split into two parts. One will fall towards the sliding mirror, and another will fall towards the mixed mirror. So after that, collectively it will reflect. Okay, and it will fall to the next step in sample. Okay, and it will pass to the sample, and then whatever transmitted light, this will be detected by the detector, and you will get the information in the form of spectra. So this is overview of simple setup of FTIR. So now question is this white two kind of mirror have been used here. So please find the answer and let me know at the end of this talk. So advantage behind using this FTIR over IR is to this improved signal to noise ratio, faster acquisition of FTIR spectra, and superior wavelength wave number accuracy. So this is advantage behind you using this FTIR. This is kind of mathematical operation. Now, as Professor Shekhar Srivastava mentioned in his talk, that nowadays we are using most advanced FTN, NMR, FTIR kind of thing. So it's kind of mathematical operation to execute better spectra. Okay, so all the instrumental techniques have their own working principle. Okay, now some set of laws or mathematical equation. So here IR works on Hooke's law. So let's discuss the Hooke's law. Suppose a mass attached with a spring and suspended, and we are applying this force I demonstrated in the second picture. Project downward direction, then what would happen? The spring will start oscillating because of stretching as well as compression. And suppose the distance going to be oscillate x, okay, as demonstrated here. So next, then according to the Hooke's law, F is directly proportional to the distance going to oscillate, right? So equation, you can write the equation, F spring is equal to minus Kx, where this K is the spring constant or proportionality constant. Okay, now, this was the story about the single atom, right? So now let's consider the two masses M1 and M2 connected with the diatomic molecule. Okay, and K is bond, this covalent bond, let's consider as a spring. Okay, so apply this IR radiation. So what will happen? This spring would start the oscillate. So in this condition, frequency of oscillation formula will be this. This one, the upper side formula is for the single atomic molecule. The green one formula is for the diatomic molecule. Right? So mu is equal to 1/2 pi under root K upon Mr. Mr is the reduced mass. Sometimes we denote it as mu. Right? So don't worry about this. Okay. So now let's consider the real diatomic molecule Cu. The Cu has mass M1. Means how to apply this reduced mass to the equation. Okay. This is my objective here. And this is a CO molecule. C has the M1 and O has the M2 mass. Okay, and this is the IR source light. Just irradiate it. This molecule will start the oscillating. So now what will happen? You can apply the value of M1 and M2 to the here, and you can find out the reduced mass, and you put it in formula. Then you can calculate the frequency of oscillation for this CO or any molecules. So, but हर चमकती चीज हुई चीज सोना नहीं होती है. Means all the vibration may not lead to the IR absorption or IR active. So as we know, the vibration transition of 2 points. One is stretching, another is bending. So in stretching, in which bond length is going to change, and another is bending, in which angle is going to be changed. So it is worth to mention here that हर चमकती चीज सोना नहीं होती, means all the vibrations are not IR active. So let's consider this Cl2 molecule. Do you think this IR radiation will change the dipole moment in this molecule? No. Okay, so this molecule is not active for the FTIR. So let's consider another molecule, which is carbon dioxide this time. So IR molecule will undergo vibration, right? And but can't absorb the IR radiation. Means net dipole moment will be 0. Means this carbon dioxide molecule is not active for the IR spectroscopy, but the symmetrical stretching. Then what is the necessary condition for the IR absorption? In symmetric stretching, as demonstrated here, symmetric stretching with no dipole moment means it is IR inactive. Suppose the IR radiation can cause the bending in the dipole, okay, and net change in dipole moment is there, then this kind of vibration will be active for IR. Okay, another next is asymmetric stretching dipole moment, and this kind of system also will be active for IR. Now let's consider another molecule, water. Okay, so after irradiation with IR, okay, and this molecule, this water will change its dipole moment, which will be equal to 1.8 dB. So this water molecule is active for IR radiation, and you can easily calculate this dipole moment change with the use of this formula, U is equal to Q into D. Okay, so now question arises, which type of molecule show the IR absorption? So a molecule which shows the net change in the dipole moment after absorbing the IR radiation. For instance, suppose you have this hydrogen and bromine molecule. So after radiation, it will not change this dipole moment will be 0. So this kind of molecule, diatomic molecule, will be inactive for the IR. But on the other hand, suppose you have OH, NH, CH kind of molecule, and which will change the dipole moment. Okay, so net dipole moment will not be equal to 0. So this kind of molecule will be active for IR. Okay, so now let's consider the another example, CC. As written here, the net dipole moment is 0. Okay, for this CC bond. But the dipole moment depends on the group attached. As you know, the carbon has tetravalent valency, Okay, so another substituent will be here. So this carbon-carbon bond IR activity will depend on these substituents attached to the carbon-carbon bond. Okay, similarly, we have another group of molecule like C double bond C, C triple bond C, then CO, then CCl, then CBr. Okay, it also exhibits the dipole moment and can show IR signal. So here also it will depend on the substituent. Okay, what kind of groups are attached to the carbon-carbon double bond or carbon-carbon triple bond. Okay, so what is the necessary condition? IR stretching frequency. What they do depend. What are the factors which will depend? The IR stretching frequency means it is in the formula. You can see that directly on the strength of bonding of two atoms. Okay, means this nu is directly proportional to the K. Okay, but it is inversely proportional to the reduced mass of two atoms. Okay, so nu will increase with increasing the bond strength. Okay, the bond is strong, then this frequency will be higher. Okay, but it will decrease. It will increase upon decreasing this reduced mass. Okay, so this slide is important for the conversion of wavelength to wave number. Okay, so as you know, wavelength is equal to, you can write the 1 upon wave number. So this, if you are getting the information in the form of wavelength, you can immediately convert into in the form of wave number. Okay, or wave number you can convert into wavelength, and then you can convert into the form of energy also. So wavelength is in micron. Okay, and wavelength typically we measure in the centimeter inverse 1. Right, so the fact is that 5 micron correspond to the 2000 centimeter inverse 1, and 20 microns correspond to the 500 centimeter inverse 1. So this is kind of interconversion. So what will be formula? Nu is equal to C upon lambda. As you know, nu is equal to, you can write 1 upon lambda is nu bar, means wave number. Okay, so now if you want to represent your formula in the form of wave number, just write 1 upon, just replace this, put the value of this. Okay, 1 upon 2 pi c, then under root k upon mu. Okay, so it's easy. Now you can get the information in the form of wave number. Okay, you can represent all the formula in the form of wave number. Okay, so as I mentioned, this nu bar means wave number is directly proportional to force constant, means stronger the bond or shorter the bond length, then higher will be frequency to vibrate the bond. And nu bar is inversely proportional to the reduced mass, means smaller the atoms required for higher frequency to vibrate, vice versa. Suppose let's consider the ethanol molecule. Okay, so you will have two kind of stretching frequency. One is corresponding to the OH. Okay, and it will appear at the 3600 centimeter inverse for this OH. Another, you have CO stretching, which would appear at the 1100 centimeter inverse 1. We measure the IR signal in terms of wave number. Fine. So thus we can conclude that IR can give information about the functional group, types of bond, chemical environment, and structure of molecules. Okay, this slide is important to understand how the molecule absorbs and transmit the radiation. So each stretching and bending vibration occurs with the characteristic frequency. Okay, this is molecular intrinsic property, as the atoms and changes involved are different for different bonds. Okay, so y-axis, as I mentioned you, this will be percentage transmittance, and x-axis will be wave number, which unit will be centimeter inverse. So if you look at this spectra, okay, this side is almost 100% transmittance. Means what? There is no, the region where no oscillation bond is interacting with higher light, means there is no absorption. Whatever light incidenting, that is 100% transmitting to the other side. But what about this region, the down one? The region where electromagnetic field of oscillating bond interacts with higher light and same transmittance is low. Okay, means some amount of light getting absorbance here. Whatever incident light, it's not completely coming out. Only around 20% is coming out, means 80% absorbed by the molecule. Okay, and where this energy will be spent? In vibration of molecule. Okay, so now these are the facts, summary of IR spectroscopy. Lighter atoms will allow the oscillate to be faster at higher energy. There is specific true bonds, okay, like CH, NH, and OH. Stronger the bond will have higher energy oscillation, as we can prove from this Hooke's law and the formula. And you know the energy order for this triple bond will be higher than double bond than single bond, and it will appear in the IR spectrum also in the same order. Okay, like triple bond will appear into 2700 to 2000, then double bond 2000 to 1600, and below 1600, or you can say below 1500, that is called fingerprint region, and single bond will appear in the fingerprint region. But we have another region which is includes 4000 to 2700, that is bonds related to hydrogen, the real bond. Okay, OH, NH, and CH kind of bonds will appear in this region. So remember, triple bond, double bond, then single bond. Something appearing in this region, suppose, immediately blindly you can say there must be a triple bond. Okay, suppose something appearing in this region 2000 to 1600, blindly you can say there must be double bond. Okay, and in single bond, it will absorb in this region. Well, so now let's discuss with real examples. Suppose I have taken here the propionic acid. Okay, it's kind of carboxylic group here. Okay, so if carboxylic group present in monomer, okay, the spectra will appear like 3540. If it is present in dimeric form, okay, it is connected to the hydrogen bond, then it will appear in this region. Okay, and this is the CO stress dimer. If it is in form of dimer, okay, so it will appear the CO at 715 centimeter inverse 1. Then another CO stretch is 1240. Suppose you have deprotonated this proton, okay, acidic proton you have deprotonated with the help of sodium hydroxide. So it will form the sodium salt of propionic acid, right? The CO stretch will appear now 1662. So this is kind of, you can prove the deprotonation or chemical reaction by using this FTIR spectra. Okay, so not only this, you can prove the stabilization of nanoparticles also. Suppose the CO act as capping atom, okay, a ligand, then you can prove very easily with the help of FTIR spectroscopy. So you can prove the complexation behavior also of the molecule. Suppose here this is the ligand, okay, which has the OH group also, double bond N also, okay, and C double bond O also. So which atom is participating in the coordination, you can prove very, very easily with the help of yes. But here you can see here the kind of keto-enol tautomerism is there. That's why the peak here, it's in the region of OH, it's not disappearing completely, but the nature is changing. Okay, this is kind of two peaks here. Now two peaks also coming, very sharp peak, but the different position. That means after deprotonation of this phenolic proton, there is another phenolic proton which is in the form of keto-enol tautomerism. So this O is participating, N is participating, and this one is also participating. You can see here the peak corresponding to the CO has been shifted to the 1611 centimeter inverse. That means there is coordination between this double bond O and cadmium. Let's discuss another example. So suppose this ligand is bit complicated than earlier one. So what is happening here? The two binding sites taking participating in the coordination with cadmium, but third arm is remain free. How to prove with the help of FTIR spectroscopy? Is it possible to prove that third arm is free from this cadmium coordination? Yes, it is possible. So when you record for this ligand, you'll get the two peaks, right? At 1661 and 1621, as well as 1526 for this double bond. Okay, for this double bond. Okay, when you treated with cadmium in presence of lithium hydroxide, we obtained this kind of thing. But see, if you look at 1661, almost no change. Okay, it is appearing in same. Means one CO is remain free from cadmium coordination. Okay, but there is shift in these two. Okay, star mark. Okay, like 1621, it is shifted to 1610, and another is appearing at 1539, which is corresponding to these two. Okay, so by using this FTIR spectroscopy, you can solve the complicated process also in the chemical reaction. So another example about complexation. I am not going in detail. So now let's discuss our next agenda, introduction to UV visible spectroscopy. So it is in terms of principle, it is more easy to understand than FTIR, but it is more advanced than FTIR. You can solve many problems related to complicated reaction with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. So the unsaturated molecule means pi electrons are molecules with the lone pair electron. Lone pair means non-bonding electron, can absorb the energy in the form of ultraviolet light. There in the previous we have discussed about infrared, but here we'll talk about the ultraviolet light to excite these electrons, right? These electrons means pi electrons and non-bonding electrons, means lone pairs, from their ground energy orbital to the higher molecular orbitals as demonstrated here. This is the ground state, this is the excited state. So when the molecule will absorb UV light, it will excite it to the next excited state. Okay, so when a molecule or atom absorbs energy, electrons are promoted from their ground state to an excited state. Okay, so what kind of transitions are possible? First, transition involving pi and n electrons. Another transition involving charge transfer. This is a new term and quite interesting. Charge transfer electrons. Okay. Another is transition involving d and f electrons. Okay. So I hope you understand the first one and third one, but new term is charge transfer electron, which is quite interesting phenomena in the material science or chemistry. So there are four kind of, as I mentioned you, three states are possible: bonding, non-bonding, and anti-bonding. So accordingly, there are four kind of transitions also possible, like pi to pi star transition, then n to pi star transition, then sigma to sigma star. Then another possibility is n to sigma star. So what will be means energy required for each transition will follow a order, right? Sigma to sigma star, as demonstrated here. This is the highest one, okay, in terms of energy. Then n to sigma star, then pi to pi star, then least one will be n to pi star. Okay, here. So these are the energy order, and correspondingly you will get the spectra. Right, so this is charge transfer absorption. As I mentioned you, to make the charge transfer complex, you need a acceptor atom as well as donor atom. So donor atom will have the electron rich center, okay, electron rich entity, and the acceptor atom will have electron deficient. Okay, so if you are managed to organize this donor acceptor, donor acceptor, donor acceptor, okay, so it will produce the charge transfer. Okay, charge will be transferred from donor to acceptor atom. But how to characterize with the help of UV visible spectroscopy? Okay, so first you record the UV spectra for the donor, and then regard the UV spectra for the absorption for the acceptor molecule. Then in next step you organize this in this fashion: donor acceptor, donor acceptor. Okay, so now you record the spectra for this complex. Okay, so this is the, I demonstrated here, this is the spectra, individual spectra for the absorbance for the acceptor, and then this is the spectra for the donor. Okay, and in addition to this, in third step, you will get the spectra around 400 to 500 nanometer if you will talk about the wavelength. Okay, so this clearly indicates that the third one, okay, generated obtained from this acceptor and donor, this must be charged transfer band and easily characterized between 400 to 500, which will produce really the color. Okay, these two are colorless as it is absorbing in UV region. Okay, these two are colorless, but this one will have the intense color. Okay, because of transfer complex formation. So this is a complicated process you can put with the help of UV visual spectroscopy. So again, let's discuss the electromagnetic radiation. This UV visual means ultraviolet region, and visible light will be in between this X-ray and microwave region. So in visible region also, you can say, as you know, there are 7 lights color. Okay, which one will absorb where? Suppose a molecule you prepared the molecule which is absorbing nearly 700. Okay, you are getting the spectra or band peak at the around 700. Okay, so you can say that this is a kind of red. Okay, the color will be red. Okay, so this 500, 600, the green color, and then 400 to 500 will be corresponding to violet color. Okay, so color also you can decide with the help of UV visual spectroscopy. Okay, so let's discuss now the basic principle of UV visual spectroscopy. Suppose you have solution you filled in a cuvette. Now you irradiate the UV radiation. So what will happen? Few amount of light will be reflected from this wall. Some amount of light will be absorbed. Okay, and few amount of light means energy will be loses in a scattering process, and rest of the things will be transmitted from this cuvette. So this attenuation can result absorption, scattering, reflection, and interface. And these three, except this absorption, these are the sources of error. You can consider it as sources of error. So we'll measure when we talk about the absorption, how much light absorbed by your material. We'll discuss about this. And what is the range for UV visual region? Is 180 to 900. In this also, the UV region will have from 180 or 200 to 400 nanometer, and then 400 to 800 or 900 will be your visual region. Right, so now you can formulate this concept. Delta I is equal to I incident, okay, means I transmitted, intensity of light incident and then transmitted will be equal to delta I. And delta I will have the I absorbed, how much light absorbed and how much reflected and how much interface and how much scattered. Okay, so this is simple setup. This is UV cuvette. Okay, you fill your material, I incident beam, then you are getting this IT, okay, transmitted light. Means some amount of light absorbed, which we can calculate by using this formula. Okay, this is the simple setup, means typical setup of about the UV visual spectroscopy. So you have source of radiation, then slit, then you have lens to control the light, then you have grating to rotate, split this light into 7 color, then you have slit which permit the only one light. Okay, then you have the chopper, rotating chopper, which will split the light into 2 parts. One will go to this side and another will go to the sample side. Okay, so you have now reference and sample. The light will same time light will pass to the reference and sample also. Okay, now you'll have the 2 detector. So in advanced instrument we have 2 detector, right? Usually we manage the instrument, means older model with 1 detector, right? Both light will fall to the 1 detector, then it will go to amplifier, then you'll get the UV visual spectra in the form of, means it will be recorded by your recorded detector. So now you have this, you need the radiation source, means tungsten filament lamp, which is more specifically they emit the radiation at 375 nanometer, while the intensity of hydrogen deuterium lamps falls below the 375. Means you need two kind of source. Okay, one is tungsten filament lamp and other is hydrogen deuterium lamp. Suppose you want to record UV spectra below 375, automatically your instrument will change to the hydrogen deuterium lamp. Okay, for the more than 375 nanometer instrument, automatically use the tungsten filament lamp. Okay, so what are the component of UV visible spectrophotometer? Typically, we need light source, which is made up, I discussed, deuterium lamp plus tungsten filament, or it can be lead, it can be xenon lamp also, depends on setup. The next step, you need the monochromator, okay, which filters, which can be filter or prism or gratings, as I discussed. Then next you need the detector, okay, detector which is photographic plate or PMT. So usually question comes, UV visible as what kind of detector? So PMT detector, okay, and our photodiode arrays. So this is the overview of simplest setup of single beam UV visible spectrophotometer. So we'll discuss what is difference between single beam and double beam UV visible spectrophotometer. So suppose as usual you have source light, it irradiated to the this monochromator. I mean monochromator allow only one light, okay, and this is a kind of setup. There is no connection between the reference cell and sample cell, right? So at the time you will record for either reference cell or sample cell, okay. So suppose it in first step you will record for reference cell, okay. After that photodetector will nullify this effect of the solvent, okay, a reference cell, and then in next time you will change the cell with the sample cell. Okay, and the next step you will get the spectra for your sample. Okay, this is the overview of single cell. But what about in double beam? Okay, nowadays we are using the double beam. Okay, no need to change again and again. Just put the reference cell and sample cell together. Okay, so what will happen? Source of light, it will first pass through the filter or chromatographer. Then we'll have the special kind of mirror, which will split light into two parts. One will go towards the reference cell, another will move towards the sample cell. Okay, then both individually it will move towards this photodetector. Okay, and collectively both will fall on the photodetector, then amplifier, then you'll read out the spectra, your data. So this is one setup, and most advanced, another advance is that double beam in space. Okay, what is the difference between these two? At this stage itself, you are splitting these two beam. Okay, and individually it is moving towards reference cell and then sample cell, and next step you have two individual photodetector. One photodetector 1 and photodetector 2 for sample cell. Okay, so it will record your information and then it will send to the amplifier, then you'll read out the spectra. Okay, so what is difficulty? Difficulty here to find perfectly matched detector. So this should be equal. Okay, so as I mentioned you, all the instrumental technique has some kind of formula. So transmittance you can calculate by using this formula. IT means transmitted radiation upon the incident radiation, and if you want to calculate in percentage, just multiply by 100, you'll get the percentage transmittance. Right. So now this is most famous one, Lambert-Beer law. So UV visible works on Lambert's-Beer law. What is formula? A is equal to epsilon LC, where A is the absorbance and epsilon is the molar absorption coefficient and C is the molar concentration and L is the optical path length. So what is variable here? Absorbance can vary, Okay, concentration you can vary, but these two are the constant. Okay, path length usually we keep 1 centimeter. Okay, and epsilon, what is epsilon? Molar absorption coefficient. So I'd like to mention here, please pay attention. This is the intrinsic property of a molecule which never change. Intrinsic property of a molecule. Okay, which never change when you will change the concentration. Okay, so keep in mind, always keep in mind. So absorbance is directly proportional to the concentration. When will concentration increase, absorbance will increase. When you decrease the concentration, absorbance will increase of a material. Okay, so now what are the application of UV visible spectroscopy? You can find out the unknown concentration. You can determine the unknown concentration. So for determination of unknown concentration, you need a reference. Okay, you need a known concentration of analyte. Okay, just fill here. Okay, this is the standard analyte, means known concentration. Unknown volume, you keep the same. You fill with the required amount of solvent. Okay, if you are using standard cuvette, it will be like 2.5 ml. So now you titrate one by one and you'll get the information about the unknown concentration. It is like a usual titration. N1 V1 is equal to N2 V2. Just here V volume you are replacing with the absorbance. So band gap estimation also you can do with the help of UV. This topic is more applicable for the physicists, not for the chemistry people. Okay, so balance band, when you apply the energy, the valence electron will be transmitted to the excited to the conduction band. So what is gap between, what is the energy between this energy difference between valence band and conduction band? You can find out with the help of this formula. Okay, Eg is equal to Sc upon lambda c, and if you write in moles simplified form, Eg is equal to 1240 upon lambda c. What is lambda c? Lambda c, just extrapolate this. Suppose this is the typical UV visible spectrum for the zinc oxide crystal. Okay, extrapolate it, you will get the value for this lambda c. Okay, what will be value for zinc oxide? 386.3. So put it here, you will get the Eg band gap. So in band gap also there are two kind of band gap. Okay, direct and indirect. I am not going in detail because it is more used for the physicist. Okay, so now next application is presence and absence of charge transfer. How to determine whether charge transfer is present or absent. So suppose we have designed this molecule in our laboratory. Okay, and this NH means there will be lone pair electron which will act as donor, and then this is pi conjugated system, pi system. Then this is a strong acceptor group, nitro. This is the simplest design to prove this presence of and absence of charge transfer. So what will happen? Suppose if you will trigger this. Okay, for trigger we need the basic solution like lithium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide. Okay, when you trigger, what will happen? This lone pair will flow with the help of this pi conjugated system and towards this nitro group, right? So for this ligand, as demonstrated here in this blue line, okay, we have obtained some spectra, right? So when you have treated with lithium hydroxide, sodium, potassium hydroxide, and this peak transformed into another new peak at 450 nanometer at the expense of original peak corresponding to the ligand, this ligand. Okay, and this you can prove with the help of titration also, means if you control addition, okay, slowly this peak diminished and you have obtained the new peak as demonstrated in this red color, right? Via this isobastic point. This is a new term for you. Okay, isobastic point has some importance in this UV visible spectroscopy, means this is equilibrium point, and at this isobastic point Before this isobasic point, you have something else, and after isobasic point, you have something else. Means reactant is converting into product via this point that is called isobasic point. In this, at this point, both species are present in the equilibrium, at the equilibrium. So this kind of information you can get with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. So to prove this phenomena, presence and absence of charge transfer, just we move this NO2 to the ortho position, right? So what will happen? There will be charge flow in this system, but it will be less because of hindrance, okay? Because of hindrance, the charge flow will be less. As you can see here, the charge transfer is very prominent because absorption is too high, but here in this case of absorption is too less, okay? So now we designed another molecule, okay? Like we kept this nitro group at the meta, okay? So if you follow this charge transfer, means conjugated structure, so charge transfer will discontinue at this position between carbon and nitro bond. So, okay, as you can see here, charge transfer is almost absent, okay, in case of meta position. So you can prove with the help of UV visible spectroscopy very simply. And next application is to determine the metal to ligand ratio, and by plotting this Jobs plot, okay, and which you can perform with the help of UV visible spectroscopy very easily. Means you can find out the exact ratio of metal to ligand with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. And then you can also prove evidence of metal complexation by a UV visible spectroscopy. As I demonstrated this molecule in FTIR spectroscopy, okay, especially designed molecule which 2 arms involve in cadmium coordination and third arm is remain free from cadmium coordination, okay. So when ligand itself treated with cadmium, okay, this ligand peak corresponding to ligand peak, this is diminished, okay, this peak also diminished, but this is converted into another new peak, okay, which proves the complex formation, cadmium complex formation takes place this isobasic point, okay. So when this molecule we treated with ultrasound, okay, what is happening here? All these cadmium molecules is leaving out, means there is breakage of coordinate bond under the influence of the first time. For the first time, we proved that ultrasound can break this coordinate bond, okay. And what is happening here? This peak is getting down and it is converted back into the ligand position, okay. But after 5-minute rest, again the recomplexation takes place with different kind of absorption behavior. Means something new kind of molecule is forming. So this kind of complicated phenomena under influence of ultrasound, we have successfully proved with the UV visible spectroscopy. So I assume that this is a strong and powerful technique to prove many complicated chemical reaction, chemical transformation with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. So further we proved the ratio also, okay. Same ligand treated with cadmium, we found the 1:1 ratio, and when we treated with zinc, just we replaced this cadmium with zinc, we found 2:3 ratio by plotting this Jobs plot. Okay, so you can also prove the oxidation state of metal. Suppose you have iron 2 plus, iron 3 plus, you can prove it very easily, okay. For instance, here set up complex demonstrated here for iron 2 plus and this iron 3 plus. So iron 2 plus will absorb from this 770 nanometer to 430 nanometer, while this iron 3 plus will absorb from 392 to say 363 nanometers. So you can differentiate the oxidation state also within the D transition range. So another, I already discussed about the demetallation. You can prove the demetallation under influence of ultrasound with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. So here we have kept the cadmium, okay, and we demonstrated that demetallation under influence of ultrasound. But when we replace this cadmium with zinc, what is happening? This zinc is also helping in complex formation, means ligand is getting complexed, okay, as demonstrated here through this isobastic point. But when this solution, zinc containing solution treated with the ultrasound, what is happening here? Almost no change. Okay, before applying ultrasound and after applying ultrasound, there is no change. Okay, you can see this red line and blue line almost similar. Means you can conclude that cadmium is involving or getting undergo for demethylation process, while zinc forms the very stable complex, and where there is no effect of ultrasound and zinc complex. So we have proved this complicated phenomena with the help of UV visible spectroscopy, and paper was successfully accepted in Journal of Material Chemistry A, almost impact factor 12. And we can also prove, along with this UV transformation in UV region, we can also prove this DD transition also. Suppose we have treated this ligand H2Al with the cobalt. Okay, again this ligand is transforming into another complex via this isobastic point. So along with this set of information, we also have got another set of information in the range of this 500 to 1000, which is corresponding to the DD transition. Okay, so we have discussed that about the charge transfer. Okay, this is complicated mechanism of the charge transfer. So in this, suppose you have obtained this charge transfer complex with the help of potassium. Potassium acts as pulling agent. Okay, it pulls the charge transfer from this nitrogen towards strong acceptor potassium. Okay, so when you have treated with 18 crown 6, the potassium will be trapped by 18 crown 6, means pulling agent you have removed. Okay, so now it will attend to the original position, means all the charge transfer will be sent back to the nitrogen position. Okay, and you will get the colorless solution. Okay, when charge transfer complex is there, then you will get the color solution, and when charge transfer is absent, you will get the colorless solution. So this complicated mechanism you can prove with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. You can see here the ligand, when you treated with potassium, it converted into red color, as well as this peak converted into another peak around 450 nanometer, which is related to charge transfer. Okay, through this isobastic point. Okay, so when this solution treated with 18 crown 6, what is happening here, this charge transfer complex, the peak corresponding to charge transfer complex getting diminished and converting back into the ligand position. As you can see here, the color change also, corresponding color change also. So this kind of complicated mechanism we have proved earlier with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. And not only this, you can also monitor the real-time reaction in the UV visible spectroscopy. For instance, we have demonstrated the reduction of nitrophenol, okay, with the help of UV visible spectroscopy. Not only the real-time monitoring, but we can get the many kind of information related to kinetics also. For instance, the apparent constant, activation energy, then enthalpy, and then entropy also you can calculate for any reaction. This is overall conclusion is that this is most powerful technique if you apply properly. So as I mentioned you, I work on this gel kind of material, soft materials. So if anyone interested, it's motivational PhD student or anyone interested for internship, you can write to me. Okay, I usually explore the stimuli responsive material, then self-healing, then nanofabrication, nanocatalysis, fluorescent material also, means fluorescent gel. And right now we have started the super absorbent material also for agriculture applications. Okay, then sensing, then conductance also we are exploring in the gel materials for battery applications. So anyone interested, you can write. My email ID is written here. So thank you for listening to me. And if you have query, I would be more happy to answer.
Thank you, sir, for such a well-constructed and insightful lecture. If anybody from the audience has any question, please go ahead. We don't have time for a lot of questions, but you can take a quick few.
So